If you've just purchased or are thinking about purchasing a caravan or any other kind of trailer and have never towed before, then you probably have some worries about reversing, but don't worry because it's not as difficult as you think. And in this video, I'll explain the principles and even show you how you can practice in the comfort of your own home. Hi, it's Dave T here, and when I tell people we have a caravan, one thing that often comes up is the question of towing. More specifically, it's questions about reversing. It's perhaps not surprising that many drivers, even experienced ones, have never towed a trailer before. And whilst I'm guessing that pretty much all drivers would be comfortable with towing a trailer when going forward, a lot are unsure about how easy or difficult it is to reverse. So in this video, I'll help explain the process of maneuvering a trailer when reversing, as well as providing some useful tips. So before we get technical, I would recommend that after watching this, you find some time to take your trailer somewhere quiet like a trading estate or large car park on a Sunday where you can practice reversing. It really will help your confidence trying this out without any pressure. I've also noticed a lot of people now use motor movers to park their caravans in storage or even moving them onto pitches on site. Now, motor movers can be really useful in certain situations, especially if you store your caravan in an awkward location such as down the side of a house. But like everything, reversing a trailer becomes easier with practice, and using a motor mover in places where you could actually just reverse is missing out on an opportunity to practice. If you stop and think about your normal day-to-day driving, apart from parking, you don't have much reason to actually reverse that often. However, if you've driven for any length of time, then you will have been in situations where you've had to reverse whilst on the road. Whether you've taken a wrong turn, need to give way to an oncoming vehicle on a narrow road, or perhaps found yourself in an awkward position at a service station, at some point you are likely to have to reverse with your trailer, and it will be a lot less stressful if you practice reversing every time you've parked or pitched. But don't panic, as this video is here to help you. So with that said, I'm going to use some diagrams to explain the theory of reversing, and these are courtesy of an app called ReverseMyTrailer. It's been developed by a UK company and is available on Android and Apple mobile devices as well as PC. Now, reversing a trailer in a straight line is in many ways the simplest reversing technique, but also requires the most finesse to master. When reversing without a trailer, there is only one objective, which is basically to head in a straight line in the right direction. If you start going slightly left or right, you simply need to correct the direction. And as you can see in this simulation, even with some pretty erratic steering on my part, the car will end up pretty much where it needs to be. With a trailer attached, there is the additional objective of keeping the center line of the trailer in line with the center line of the car. If we actually look at a similar simulation, we can then see what the trailer is doing. And if the car steers to the left, then the trailer will be swung to the right and vice versa. This means that any incorrect steering needs to be effectively overcompensated to swing the trailer back online again. And if you don't compensate correctly, then the alignment issue gets worse and worse. The simplest way to reverse in a straight line is to use your mirrors, and if you see the trailer appearing in the right-hand mirror, then steer gently towards the right. If it appears in the left-hand mirror, then you guessed it, steer towards the left. And of course, don't forget to cancel the steering once you get back on a straight line. This does take some practice, but if you follow these basic principles of steering towards the side of the van you can see in the mirror, you won't go far wrong. Here are some other general tips for straight line reversing though. Now first of all, if you have space to do so, then pull forward first, as this will naturally align the car and the trailer. Gentle steering inputs are best, and go slowly and don't be rushed. If you do start to get out of line, stop and reassess before continuing. And if you get too much out of line, if there's space, pull forward to straighten up again. Ask someone to help guide you, mainly to ensure you don't hit anything. And consider getting a reversing camera. I have a video on fitting a low-cost reversing camera without drilling any holes in the trailer, so I'll link that in the description below. So now if we cover the more complex part of actually maneuvering a trailer, one piece of advice people often hear about is that you have to steer in the opposite direction. Now this is sort of true, but also a little bit misleading, so let's look at the mechanics of steering a trailer. Unless you are towing with a forklift truck, a tank, or one of the few four-wheel steer cars on the market, then your car will be steered by changing direction of the two front wheels. This means that the direction or side that the leading half of the wheel is pointing to is the direction that the car will turn towards. And reversing is exactly the same, with the front edge of the wheel still determining the side that you're turning towards. A trailer, of course, has no steering wheels, instead just a pair of wheels halfway along the vehicle. So we'll effectively go straight-ish in the direction along the centre line of the trailer. By the way, with twin axles, they behave exactly the same way, apart from they have a tendency to prefer going in a straight line and drift offline a little bit less. Many people will actually often say that twin axles are actually easier to tow because of that. Also, very small trailers are notoriously difficult to reverse because the steering input at the hitch is much greater relative to the trailer length, so they have a greater tendency to jackknife. I mention this because a lot of people's initial reversing experience is limited to small trailers, and they incorrectly assume that caravans, being much larger, will be more difficult because they are larger. In fact, the opposite is true. So back to steering, and the trailer is steered by moving the hitch end to the left or right so that the centre line of the trailer is pointing in the correct direction. Most importantly here, when reversing, the hitch is moved to the left to make the centre line point to the right and vice versa. This is where both the truth and the lie of steering in the opposite direction comes from, because steering a trailer in reverse actually requires not one but two inputs of steering. If we attach our tow vehicle to the trailer, it becomes immediately clear that we can't just move the hitch left and right. If only we could, then parallel parking would be much easier. Instead, we have to steer and move the car towards the direction that the hitch needs to move in, which is the opposite direction to where we intend to go. By the way, this additional manoeuvre is why you should always allow some extra distance when reversing back into a space by pulling further forward first. Now let's attach the caravan to the car and try the same process in the simulator. Step 1 is to position the outfit so that the wheels of the trailer are a few meters ahead of the turning point and the vehicle and trailer are in line. In step 2, we need to change the direction of the caravan, which means that the hitch, in this case, needs to move to the left, but because it is attached to the car has to reverse away from our intended direction. Now that the caravan is pointing in the right direction, we need to stop pushing the hitch any further to the left, and it's important to note that just by driving the car straight, we will still actually be pushing it in that direction. So we need to actually recompensate and start steering in the correct direction, so we're now following the correct line. If we don't, we can push it past the maximum point of the hitch and effectively jackknife it. Towards the end of the turn, we need to straighten the car and the trailer. So just like in the straight line reversing, we steer the car towards the side of the trailer we can see in our wing mirror to straighten up. Now, if you are new to reversing trailers, then you are unlikely to be able to just reverse into a parking spot in one smooth movement. If you achieve it, well done, great, but you're likely not to. And you will often need to pull forwards slightly to correct any incorrect or oversteering and then reverse again. Where a lot of beginners go wrong is when they try to correct course purely by reversing. And so just like with straight line driving, here's some practical tips for manoeuvring a trailer. First and most obvious is to check what's behind and around you. If at all possible, get someone to help you. And if you do have a helper, then agree some simple signals in advance. Often with someone new, it's best that they limit their guidance to purely stop and go. Make sure that you can see them. I personally do this by beeping my horn whenever my wife goes out of my view so that she knows I can't see her. In tight spaces, you will often need to ask how much space you have. It's usually best if they just show you this by holding their hands apart, since not everyone thinks that 6 inches is the same. Also, open your rear view windows so you can hear them. In terms of manoeuvring, slow again is always best. And before you start, plan a strategy, and you may find it easiest to break the maneuvers into steps by adjusting the steering, then moving, and so on. Find a marker that you can easily see and recognize. I asked my wife to stand at the end of the bay line as I'm turning in, and so far I haven't hit her yet. Personally, I find it best to concentrate on where the caravan wheels are, since that gives me a better indication of the direction and also the pivot point. But don't of course forget about the rear end of the trailer beyond the wheels. Oversteering can generally only be corrected by pulling forward, so don't be embarrassed if people are watching and you can't reverse in one fluid motion. Understeering is generally corrected by opposite steering, which is where many novices go wrong. Moving the van sideways is very difficult, so if it's in a situation where it's in the right place but it needs to be like 1 foot to the left, that's quite tricky to do. So if you find that you're in the wrong line, it's often best to actually pull out and then reverse back in so you're on the right line. And again, don't be embarrassed or flustered if you need to try again. Just consider it as additional practice. Now, the main purpose of this video was to go through the theory and practice of reversing a trailer, but I'd like to also talk about the ReverseMyTrailer app. I've personally found it fun to use, and it really made me think about the process of reversing. What people struggle with most when reversing trailers is the kind of flipped logic of directions and angles. Even after towing as long as I have, I still occasionally, especially at the start of the season, have to stop and think about which way I'm going to steer in a certain situation. The app is really good at helping practice that thinking process. It allows you to look at where the trailer and car are, where they're pointing, and working out what steering input you actually need to make. The app is available on Android and iOS devices as well as PC, and when using it on a mobile device you can steer it by tilting the phone, which is actually a really realistic way of steering and makes the mobile apps probably the best approach for actual practicing. Unless of course you have to have a PC steering wheel set up, which is also supported. It's perhaps just a tad oversensitive with the mobile phone when trying to hold the phone level to drive straight, but that's not a bad thing since keeping a car and trailer perfectly in line is quite a delicate task in real life. The app has 2D plan views which help with the theory, as well as 3D views from both bystander and driver kind of mirror perspective. There are several manoeuvres, left and right hand turns, a B and E course, an offset right and left course manoeuvre, and even a parallel park. You can choose different scenes such as a caravan park, a stable yard, and even a slipway. Some of the manoeuvres are only available in certain scenes, so it's worth looking through them all. There's also a selection of vehicles and trailers including caravans, horse boxes, boat trailers, and a small utility trailer. And the utility trailer certainly demonstrates how much harder it is to reverse small trailers. Once you finish a route, the app gives you a percentage score based on how close you remain to the ideal centerline of the route. Whilst no substitute for real-world practice, this is a great and often fun way to practice the theory of trailer reversing when sitting comfortably at home or, to be honest, even on a caravan site. It does take a while to get used to the interface, but I still think that this is a great app which, given the low price, all people towing for the first time should probably give a try. Speaking of price, the mobile version is just a couple of pounds in the app stores, and the PC version is free for the 2D version, with the 3D version being charged on a donation basis. It's well worth trying out even if it's just for fun, so please do help support this developer by either using the link below, which will take you to their website to show you all the places you can get it, including the PC version, or you can just search for ReverseMyTrailer in the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. So I didn't think I was going to get away with purely doing it on a simulator. So straight reversing back. My wife's going to signal me where I'm at a certain point where I know where it is. Okay, so now I know I'm 6 foot away from the end line of the bay, so I'm going to turn the van by making a fairly sharp manoeuvre the wrong way. So this is the wrong steering, a bit tight, a bit early, and I am focusing on the wheel of the van because I'm aiming the wheel of the van. I want it in this instance to cross over the kind of yellow line at the end of our marker bay, which is where my wife was just standing, and she's moved now, which is fine. Now I'm actually looking over my shoulder to do this. Probably see that on the internal camera maybe. Always pay attention to the front of the vehicle, because if you're in a storage yard in particular, there will be other things near the front of the car. And now just steering normally. I don't think I'm going to make this in one go, so I'm going to go forward. No shame in that. Steering normally now, and again I'm concentrating on the wheels, because if I know the wheels are kind of parallel next to the line, I'm going to go a bit close to the line. So have a little forward manoeuvre. Beginning of the season, so not surprising that a bit out of practice. Now I'm using my mirrors because I can't see the wheels directly. And we're pretty much parallel. Our bay, by the way, is the lines on the bay aren't actually parallel. So you get it parallel with one side and it's then not parallel with the other. Wife's signalling me back. I've got a reversing camera. Check out that video. And wife's saying we're good. So that's it. Backed in. Hopefully all that was captured on film. It's not all just about the theory. It is about the practice. Please, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. If you're interested in other videos I make, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Most of all, thanks for watching.